Hey everyone, Voltage Modular here, and today we're going to take a look at automation in Reaper, and especially I want to take a look at a little bit of a more complicated way to do automations, which is also a bit more flexible and more interesting to work with. So, because this is going to be a pretty long video, we're just going to try to keep the pace up. If at any point you lose track, just leave a timestamp below and let me know what you're wondering about, and maybe I can help you out. So let's start off with basic automation in Reaper. Fairly simple. You can just go to the trim view, and here you can see every parameter of your VST. In this case, I'm using the DX7 criteria. And let's say, for instance, I want to automate the cutoff. I can just look up the cutoff here, and there's actually a little search thingy, and I know that they call this the macro 1. Actually, let's do mod level. This is a little bit more clear. You can just think it here. You can select the mod. And now you can add an LFO. And you can see it is going up and down there. And you can change the LFO types, and there are a couple of options. Well, this in general covers most of your basic LFO needs, of course. There's probably an automation option for this in the DX7, but let's just, for the sake of demonstration, pretend there's not. But that's how you can set up an LFO to any parameter. But let's say you want more complicated modulation than just these basic shapes. So the two examples I will give here are with Voltage Modular by Cherry Audio and Reactor by Native Instruments. And you can probably do this with different modular hosts like VSV Rack. I don't happen to own a license for VSV Rack, so I can't demonstrate that. You can just use the same principles there. So the first thing we want to do is add a Voltage Modular host. So let's just take Voltage Modular by Cherry Audio. I'm just going to use the normal VSTi. I can load this in. I want to put this before the DX7. And the first thing that will happen when we do this is that we will destroy the sound of the DX7 because all the MIDI now flows into Voltage Modular and it has nowhere to go. So what we need is a MIDI out. And we need to take the MIDI from the host into the MIDI out. And we need to feed it back into the host. So that's step one. Step two, we need some sort of modulator. Now, for the sake of demonstration, I'm just going to use a normal LFO. As just demonstrated, that's not useful because you can just use LFOs in Reaper. That's for the sake of demonstration. We also need a CC to MIDI converter. You can just plop this in there. One important note here is that CV, control voltage in modular systems, has a plus and a minus part. MIDI does not, so you need to make sure that whatever you're using is unipolar. So you need to switch your LFO to unipolar. And we're going to take a shape. Let's feed it into the first CV. Now we need to choose a CC. I'm just going to choose one that's empty, just to be sure I'm not going to change any random parameters. If you want to be especially safe, you can also set it to MIDI channel 2, which is usually not used by VSTs. We take this MIDI out and send it to the DAW as well. Now this won't change anything because this MIDI free CC is currently not assigned to anything. So it's not controlling anything. For this, we need to go into the Arturia VST. And to assign a CC, you can just click whatever control you want. So let's click the mod level. And if we go to parameter, last touch, macro 2, we can now say MIDI link CC CC3. And now you will see this controller being controlled by the LFO. So now if we play it back, There you go. Now you can make as many CCs if you want to. So if, for instance, you want to use another shape as well, you can just drag it into another slot. Let's make this 9. Now this list is just usual predefined things. So it's not guaranteed that these are either taken or not taken. But if you get weird results, just go for a different CC and you should be fine. So now we also assigned 9. Let's assign 9 to this controller. Once again, just click it, parameter, media link, CC, TC9. And this is now moving in the sawtooth. And because you have a lot of CCs, you can make a lot of different things and control a lot of different parameters. It's basically that simple. In Cherry, you can basically make anything you want, as complex as you want. Just make sure it's unipolar, so you get the desired result. So let's quickly reset this, and let's do the same thing with Reactor. So let's remove this. So let's do the same thing with Reactor. And I'm going to use the ToyBox nano blocks for these because they're very convenient to use and take up very little space, and they have a very clean layout. They're also very affordable. You can do this with standard native instrument blocks as well. I will post a screenshot of that after this little demo. So we will be using a MIDI through block. This is required to make sure your instrument still gets MIDI. So with the MIDI through, turn off the MIDI through, all MIDI will be blocked. So that's an important block. Next to that we have an LFO. I want to cover this one. It's the by to uni block, and there's a MIDI CC out block. Now all the ToyBox LFOs have a unipolar output. That's the top output. If I plug this into the MIDI out, I can set the CC right here. So let's set it to CC3. Quickly reset the patch. And now we can once again click the control, click parameter, MIDI link CC3. As easy as that. If you use the bipolar output, you will see that it only goes up. You will lose the bottom of the sine wave. To fix this, you can use the bipolar into the bi to uni and then into the controller. It will turn it back into a unipolar signal. And once again, you can just go completely mental in Reactor to create really weird things with, I don't know, step sequencers and weird randomized event things and create really wacky shapes for your modulation. Now, you might run into this thing where you have created something that does a cool thing and you want to kind of make that fixed because you're working on a track or you're working on sound design and you want to actually capture this, which would make sense. We can do that, of course. We can go into the trim and we can look up our modulator. So let's record it in the DX7 in this case. So let's go for macro 2. That's the one being modulated right now. There we go. And we can set it to write mode. if you disable the modulator, you can store the shape. So for instance, if you're using something randomized, let's, oops. Well, oh, we disabled it. So let's turn it into a random thing. And that's how you can save your weird automations. So I'm not quite sure how useful this is most of the time, but it's still a very cool concept to have this level of automation to your disposal. Another fun thing is it doesn't get limited to instruments, of course. You can also use this in, for instance, effects. So let's just quickly clear this one off. Remove. Let's quickly add a effect. So let's go for kilohertz. Reactor. Let's turn down the drive and the fuzz. What we actually want to do is we don't want to deal with the fuzz, I think. Let's just deal with the Reactor. Now again, we can just click a parameter. Parameters. It will say last touch this drive. MIDI link. CC, CC3. Activate Reactor. And again, we can save this. Obviously not the best sounding example, but it gets the idea across. So that's modulating in Reaper using Voltage Modular and Reactor to allow you to do things that are somewhat similar to what Bitwig allows you to do in their grid. So I hope you found this video useful, or at least interesting. Maybe it gave you some new ideas, in which case just let me know what you're going to use this for in the comments down below. That's it for me today. See you around.